Welcome back to Media 7 and the last part of our discussion on teenagers, sex and the media. Sarah, I said at the beginning of this show, I speculated, is this just the same old moral panic coming round again? And we have seen this repeatedly in New Zealand. I mean, the Mazengard report in the 1950s, the nation was scandalised by the idea that teenage girls had sex. Is there an element of that in the flap around these things?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a cyclic thing that it goes in and out of fashion. You know, something will happen, like the Miley Cyrus thing, all of a sudden it kicks off this huge amount of debate. I mean, the Zipporah 7 thing may have flown under the radar had it not been highlighted by Miley in such a worldwide sort of sense. So I think that, you know, these issues are the same as what they were 20 years ago. They're the same as what they were 20 years before that. The thing is, we just have more access these days to so much more information, and young people are a lot more savvy, and to make an impact, it's taking a lot more to shock people, and I guess that's where things are going.
Well, one thing that did shock people, Pebbles, was the future porn star T-shirt for little girls that your parents made.
Well,
were you embarrassed by that?
No. Well, I mean, we made heaps. We made, like, Parents Are Boring. We made, like, one with a gun on it, one with a lipstick on it for boys. Like, I mean, to be honest...
Was the intent to shock?
No, it wasn't. And we just had those stupid, like, I don't mean to be rude, but, like, those Kiwiana mums who buy their kids, like, henna clothes and stuff, and they were just like... What the... You know, you just got to realise that it's a joke, and a kid, first of all, can't read. What, it's like a 2-year-old? Like, they're not... It's for funny, like, you know, an adult's not going to walk past and go, oh, that kid is naughty, like... Why did it buy that? It's like one. So I think the parents were just being stupid. But if someone can think for themselves, then they've got a choice, and then they can realise what they actually want to do. But the T-shirt was in jest. It wasn't anything vicious, or, you know, it was just stupid parents.
Right. And Emily, let's get back to the feminist studies thing, because I think the porn star thing would be one thing that surely would have horrified anyone who taught you at university. Do you think attitudes have changed? Has the theory changed there? Because you see teenage girls walk around with similar things.
It's a lot more light-hearted, and I don't think it's necessarily a feminist issue. I think feminism is... They know what's going on.
Right, and I think we're sort of all agreed that the girls are all right. Well, we have to move on now and also have a total change of pace. Amongst the literati at last week's Auckland Readers and Writers Festival was a man who, as a war correspondent, covered the disintegration of the Soviet Union and then went on to write 2 bestsellers about Stalin. Simon Sebag Montefiore shares some war stories with Simon Pound.
Simon Sebag Montefiore, visiting author and historian. He covered some of the bloodiest conflicts of the late 20th century as the Soviet Union fell. Today, though, he's no match for the autumn Auckland sun and insists we speak in the shade. So how does an upper-class Englishman become a war correspondent?
It came about that I was an investment banker in New York when I wore a suit. And, of course, I was a totally incompetent investment banker. But when and just at that point, the Soviet Union started to fall apart in 1991. And so I bought these tickets to go and stay in a bed and breakfast company that said you could stay anywhere in the Soviet Union. And when I arrived, the Civil War broke out. This bed and breakfast company, the local representative was this kind of fat old crook. It cost me $61 a night. But as soon as I stayed with the family, I realised that they were getting paid $1 a night. Literally, that's not an exaggeration. And he was keeping... So when I told them what he was doing, they were furious. And it spread around town. So when I said I wanted to meet the president, who was a Shakespearean scholar and dictator, then besieged in his palace, this fat old crook said he'd take me. We walked up the steps of the presidential palace to these kind of sandbags, and there were these howitzers and all these kind of gangsters and ruffians and freebooters there. He said his name, and I was a journalist, and I wanted to meet the president. They looked at each other, and they just came around the sandbags, and they just punched him and threw him down the steps. And he just rolled down the steps like a great big balloon. And that was the last time I ever saw him. And then they just said to me, "You, come with me." And we went in to meet the president. And I never met that man again. And that's how I became a journalist. That's how it all started.
He makes it sound terribly easy, rambling, and a bit shambolic, but he obviously kept his eyes open to opportunities along the way.
I was flying down in this kind of plane from Moscow, which was just full of kind of gunmen and chickens and everything. It was a really... And, you know, everyone knew that the war was about to start, so only lunatics and local people were going back. And I sat next to this Ingushetian murder detective. I said I didn't speak any Russian. He didn't really speak much English. He said, but I have a son. He speaks perfect English. Would you like him to be your interpreter when you meet the president and all this kind of stuff? So I said, sure. And then the next morning at my hotel, this babushka came in and she said, your interpreter's here. And I said, great, send him in. And this 7-year-old boy arrived. And, of course, everywhere I turned up with this 7-year-old boy, everyone thought, you know, he was my catamite.
Together, they filed gonzo reportage for The Telegraph with a touch of the James Bond.
I had money from banking, so I could afford to go where I wanted, which was a wonderful thing. But I wasn't sort of, you know, I earned very little per article, even though I was risking my life. And that gave one a great freedom. And, of course, one had wonderful love affairs with kind of, you know, Italian war photographers and that sort of thing you just meet in the front line. Not so much relationships, more locationships.
That sounds great. How do I do it?
The best way to do it is to become an expert in a strange place. You know, there's no point in going to Washington or London or Moscow. You've got to go somewhere which isn't like anywhere, you know, somewhere where there's a special story, a special place, and it just happened that the Caucasus was specially suited me. I think everyone should do it. So I say to your viewers, go out and go somewhere strange and write it up, you know.
And part of being a war correspondent is knowing when to quit a situation. First there was the searing Auckland sun, and now a new interview-ending threat presents itself.
So I'm being attacked by ants here. You've got to get me out of here fast.
Simon Pound with that story. After Simon Sebag Montefiore left journalism, he went on to write 2 best-selling histories on Stalin, The Court of the Red Tsar and Young Stalin, and the novel Sashenka. And that's our show for this week. Thank you to our panellists, Sarah, Pebbles and Emily, and thanks to you for watching. We'll be back next week. Goodbye.